The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, episode 152.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the Discovery first season episode, Vaulting Ambition. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Stika. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. Folks, remember to share the podcast with your friends. Help us grow our community and reach more listeners, more Star Trek fans who would be interested in hearing us talk about Star Trek. And we are talking Star Trek today. We're talking Star Trek Discovery. This is, we're continuing on in the Mirror Universe part of the first season, and it's episode 12, so there's not a whole lot left of that first season to go through. Let me give you a quick recap of what happens in this episode. So we're in the Mirror Universe, right? Burnham is now pretending to be her mirror self, captain of the Shenzhou, and she's been commanded to present herself on the ISS Charon, which is the Emperor Georgiou's ship. And we've just, with the end of the last episode, we've been revealed who the Emperor is. It's Georgiou. Meanwhile, Ash Tyler is aboard Discovery, where he got beamed into space and then rescued. And he's now, Voq is emerging, and he's in restraints in sickbay. Saru has found that much of the data that Burnham got on the USS Defiant, crossing over to this mirror universe, has been redacted, so they need to get more information. And Burnham and Lorca are now traveling by shuttle to the Charon. Stamets, meanwhile, is mentally traveling through the mycelial network in spore space, and encounters his mirror version, and they have interactions which leads him to being told that he has to help them escape from spore space because spore space is corrupt, and he sees Hugh Culber, who, remember, was killed by Voq in a previous episode, and Hugh tells him, "Oh, no, I'm dead, I'm not really here," but that's not true, as we'll find out, and somehow. So on the Charon, Burnham presents Lorca to Georgiou, who has him taken off to be tortured. And this is where she reveals that Burnham is her daughter, her adopted daughter. So that's another big reveal that happens at this moment in the show. Burnham has this moment where she has to select a Kelpian, not knowing why. We find out later because Kelpian is a delicacy. Georgiou then reveals to Mirror Burnham at dinner that she knows that to who she thinks is Mirror Burnham, that she knows that she was working with Lorca to overthrow her, orders her execution. But Burnham has to then reveal what's really going on. I'm not your daughter. I'm from another universe. And the Emperor says, "Yeah, I know all about the other universe." And that's one of the most closely held secrets. Saru, meanwhile, turns to L'Rell, who's in the brig on Discovery, and gets her to help Tyler, convinces her to do whatever it is that she does to operate in his head to suppress the Voq personality and let the Tyler personality come back. Meanwhile, on the Charon, the captain of that ship approaches Lorca in the brig, and there's this interesting tense moment where Lorca is being told to admit this piece of data that the real Starfleet Lorca wouldn't know, under threat of killing this other person, and he won't reveal it. And meanwhile, Georgiou says, "No, your Lorca that you brought here is the mirror Lorca," and we have this big reveal. It's that Sixth Sense moment where we suddenly understand who this Lorca is, and then he, in the brig, ends up turning the tables, kills the guy who was torturing him, and reveals himself as the mirror Lorca. And that's pretty much the episode. So they're basically the three plots: Burnham and Lorca on the Charon, Stamets in the mycelial network, and Saru, Tyler, and L'Rell. So what do you think of this particular episode?
There are two things that are amazing about this first season Discovery episode. One, a title that actually fits the episode.
Right.
And it's short. And 2, it's actually a halfway decent first season Discovery episode.
Yeah. Well, I was saying when we first talked about this a few years ago, when it first aired, I felt like the second half of the Discovery first season was where it got good. You know, that it sort of redeemed that first half. And yeah, I think this kind of shows it for me. What do you think, Jimmy?
So the title is a Shakespearean allusion, which is not at all uncommon. It's from Macbeth, where the character Macbeth, who is this, king, is talking, and he says, "I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on t'other." And what he's saying there is the only thing he's really got is his intense ambition. And he's comparing it to a horse, because he's got, we have the references to spurs and pricking its sides and o'erleaping itself, leaping over itself. Like you'd have a horse vault or leap a fence, like in steeplechase.
Right.
And he's saying the only thing I've really got here is my vaulting ambition that is so intense it even leaps over itself. And so that is applied directly in this episode by Empress Georgiou to Lorca. She refers to his vaulting ambition. And so if you know how things end up for Macbeth, it's a sign of where things are going to go for Lorca. It's not going to be good. His ambition is going to be his undoing.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's a good episode as far as first season Discoveries go. It's way more interesting than what they've been doing. It's also surprisingly short. This episode is not a full hour long. It's like 37 minutes,
right,
if I recall. And so it's they didn't pad this one out.
It is interesting. There's a lot in there for 37 minutes too. I mean, they have, like I said, they have 3 separate plot lines going in this. And I wonder, does that vaulting ambition apply to any of the others? I mean, does it perhaps apply to Voq and
well, potentially it's only applied directly to Lorca, but you could argue that it also applies to other characters.
Yeah. I found that interesting. Yeah.
Frankly, you could apply it to Michael Burnham, except for they don't let it go to its logical conclusion.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
In this episode, I like the graphics for the mycelial network. They're really bizarre looking. They're like dark, but also with multicolored organic looking stuff. That's in like electric pink and blue and orange and yellow, and it's very interesting to look at. There's some nice interaction between the mirror Stamets and the
Starfleet Stamets.
Stamets, where when he first shows up, he's not sure where he is. He's never been in the mycelial network before. And he's got this copy of himself that's talking to him, and he's like, "What are you, some demented Virgil? Am I dead and you're some demented Virgil who's here to take me on a tour of hell?" And the mirror Paul has a really funny line. The mirror Stamets says to him, "Paul, you've been wrong about everything. There is a God, and she is really mad at you."
Yeah.
And then he's like, he cracks up and is like, I totally had you, didn't I?
Yeah. You should have seen our face. Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, I like the fact that he says a narcissistic Virgil, which is kind of a very interesting self-examination of himself. That Stamets goes through. He kind of knows a little bit about himself there.
And this is a reference, by the way, to Dante's Inferno, where the Roman poet Virgil gives Dante a tour of hell.
Right, right. So, couple interesting things. It's so interesting. I'm thinking back when we first saw Emperor Georgiou in person for the first time, because we'd only seen Georgiou as Captain Georgiou before this, and so this Emperor is so very different from the Shenzhen's captain that we'd seen in Battle of the Binary Stars and that. And I'm trying to remember like what it was like to see her. It was I was quite taken with this character. I mean, I always loved Georgiou since that point because it's just such an interesting seed-chewing character sometimes. And so what did you guys think of seeing Georgiou the first time at this point?
You know, and I was trying to do the same thing because, you know, and they've really developed that character over the next 2 seasons. I mean, the Georgiou that left at the end of season 3, so different in many ways, but so similar too, you know.
Yeah.
But you see little sparks of it here. You see kind of that she still wants to be, she's the emperor of all things and the conqueror of Vulcan and all those titles, you know, the great Roman style titles.
Right.
But she still wants to be the mother. She still wants to be mother to Michael Burnham. And that was, of course, so much of the character going through season 2 and 3, where she is such a regular part of the show that she wants to be motherly to Burnham, even knowing that it's a different Burnham interacting with a different Georgiou from Burnham's side.
Right. Yeah, we even got to see some of that in the when she went through the Guardian of Forever in season 3. It was an interesting perspective and how she's changed.
It's interesting rewatching this because now, if you've been following this show, Empress Georgiou is the definitive version of the character.
Yeah.
And so that's who we think of when we think about Georgiou. But in this, the only frame of reference we had was the Prime Universe Georgiou that had been Saru's and Michael's captain on the Shinzo.
Right.
And so she was portrayed as a very virtuous character. And suddenly here's this alternate take. And it's interesting trying to put yourself back in the mental position of having only known the virtuous version up to now.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That was an interesting exercise to try to remember that. And yeah, it was I mean, that's what makes the Mirror Universe so great from that very first original series episode was everyone is a mirror copy of themselves. Everyone is that other version of themselves. And they played it up in this, which is good.
Well, I remember being very surprised that scene where she takes basically the throwing star and kills all but one of her advisors just to keep the secret of the Federation of Planets top secret, and just being stunned by that action. You know, that this was not a Georgiou action. You know, you see the Prime Georgiou was very diplomatic. She was, you know, the ideal captain, you know, very, you know, no, not here.
Yes. Brutal and, just completely different. And that idea of, yes, I know all about your Federation of Planets and your mirror universe. You don't have to explain it to me, you know, but the knowledge of the existence of that universe is so dangerous that I had to kill my entire inner circle except for one schlub who got to clean up afterwards and was probably grateful for it. She
should have killed him too, and then brought in people who didn't know anything about why they died to clean up.
Right. He must have been really important to her to keep around. The other thing that was interesting was this revelation. Again, at this point, this was a revelation that Mirror Burnham was Mirror Georgiou's adopted daughter. Like we didn't, you know, to this point, we'd only thought of her as, she must be just a trusted captain. No, she's the Emperor's daughter, and that was an interesting revelation here and kind of mind-bending a bit when we saw that. So what do you think of the Kelpian scene? It was kind of super
horrific.
Disturbing. Yeah.
I mean, so the setup is when Michael is first brought into the throne room, or what's the equivalent of the throne room, and she's being welcomed by Mirror Georgiou. Mirror Georgiou gestures to 3 Kelpians and says, choose one. And Michael doesn't know what she's being asked, what the nature of the choice is. And she rolls with the situation and says, that one. And then later she discovers she was asked to choose which Kelpian would be killed and prepared for their dinner that night.
Yep.
And she discovers this over dinner after she's already been eating that Kelpian. And then after the reveal that, you know, that Georgiou makes, she's saying like, I thought you deserved a treat. And she takes some chopsticks and says, here, have some of my ganglia. And, the threat ganglia that Kelpians have to sense threats to themselves, it's considered a delicacy. And she holds it out for Michael to eat, and Michael does. And that's just a horrific moment. Knowing myself, I don't think I would have been able to keep it down.
No. Yeah. Well, and that's what makes that scene kind of brilliant, is that we're supposed to be horrified. I mean, it's a horrific moment, and it shows how twisted this place is, and the way, like Burnham was talking about in the last episode, how the ways that you have to enter into the evil and kind of you almost embrace it in order to survive, to accomplish your goal. And there's a sort of ends justifying the means aspect to that, which is, again, disturbing.
This was played so well because, Burnham looks like, like you talk about not being able to keep it down. She looked like she was ready to spew it back out like right away. I mean, that was, so well done, of just kind of like trying to play this. Oh yeah, I'm fine. We're good. Well, I could eat it. And in back of her mind, she's going, this is disgusting. How can I do this?
I remember hearing an interview with there's a person whose job it is to make on-screen food for TV shows and movies. I mean, that's one of the things that get consumed of various kinds. Let's just leave it at that. And she worked on Discovery and talked about having to develop the foods that they are eating in this meal, including like the threat ganglia, which at this point the actress Sonequa Martin Green was vegetarian. I don't know if she still is or whatever, but at the time she was vegetarian, and so having to make this thing for her to consume that she has to imagine is like, imagine like she's already vegetarian. You might become a vegetarian after having to pretend that you're eating, a sentient being's body parts. Like, oh, gross.
That would explain why the threat ganglia looked like bamboo shoots to me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was an interesting interview. I think it was the Milk Street Kitchen podcast. I like to listen to that, and they had her on. That was very interesting. So it was also an unexpected moment when Burnham, at the moment of about to be executed, when she has to reveal all. I thought it was very unexpected to me for her that she just sort of like, okay, I'm going to tell you what's going on.
Yeah,
after having hidden everything.
That was the best move, though, because at this point, Emperor Georgiou has been convinced that she is her adopted daughter who was planning to overthrow her and take her throne. How are you going to talk that back? I mean, even even if she had all of the knowledge of Mirror Burnham, it's going to be really hard to unconvince the Empress.
Yeah.
And make up some lie about how, no, Mama, I really wasn't plotting against you. It was this other thing where I was secretly defending you. I mean, that would be really hard to pull off, especially since she doesn't even have all the knowledge of her mirror self. So just coming clean and saying, here, test this piece of metal and you'll see it comes from a different universe. That was her best option.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, by the way, the piece of metal that has her name on it because it was from Captain Georgiou. Like,
right.
Huh.
Right. Yes, it has a different quantum signature, which is, again, that's something that comes up several times, and it came up in the third season of Discovery with Georgiou. The other thing which was interesting was the Saru going to L'Rell to save Tyler. It's an interesting bit of plot development because they've got Tyler. He's a murderer. He killed Culber. He is apparently insane or somehow he's violent, and Saru has this compassion. He wants to help him. He wants to,
and in a moment of lucidity, Tyler asks to be helped.
Right. That's true. And goes to L'Rell, and at first she refuses, but then Saru kind of lays it down for her and says, "Look, I'm gonna just I'm gonna beam her into the cell with you, and you can now deal with him as he is now, and you continue to tell me that you won't help him." And that's what convinces her to help. I thought that was fascinating.
There's a moment early in this subplot where they've got Tyler in sickbay, and he's thrashing around, and the doctor tells Saru that is discussing the fact that, his DNA that we have on file fits with the known Ash Tyler. and who's in Starfleet database and so forth. And Saru is like, how did they manage to stick a Klingon into this guy? And that's actually very horrific.
Yeah.
If you're thinking, okay, they like transplanted a brain and central nervous system into this guy, but it's still Ash Tyler's real body there on the outside.
Right.
Now they walk that back, because later when L'Rell explains, she says there was this real Ash Tyler. He died in the Battle of the Binary Stars, and we took his DNA and cloned his consciousness and grafted it onto Vok. Okay, so it's not like we have the real Ash Tyler's body here. They've just got cells with his DNA and his engrams in Vok's mind, but the body is still fundamentally Vok. It would have been super creepy for Ever After, though, if they had done it the other way.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that the way that they eventually say they did it, it just seems like, wow, that would be a technology that's way advanced. Like they had to change every cell's DNA to make it human Ash Tyler's DNA. They had to implant a consciousness. I mean, the idea that they can do that, the Klingons can do that. I don't know. Sometimes Star Trek, especially newer Star Trek, has these bits where they're like, if you could do that, that really breaks all of the other limitations that you've self-imposed. And I think that's one of those times. I would rather have them done something more like Manchurian Candidate, and they've reprogrammed him, and he's still Ash Tyler, but he's had a consciousness imposed on him from outside. We've seen that before.
Yeah, or it could be even just like what they had with when in The Trouble with Tribbles, where Arn Darvin is revealed to be a Klingon who's been made to look human. But as soon as you run a medical scan on him, it's like, Jim, this man is a Klingon. Yeah. And although if that had been the case, they never could have had him implausibly become the security chief for the Discovery.
Right. That's true. So, yeah, it's a tricky situation.
Well, and it is a problem that Discovery bumps into all the time, because it's a prequel to TOS, and yet they've got technologies that go far and beyond anything TOS ever imagined, far beyond even stuff that like
Next Gen
TNG and Voyager ever had,
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's always the transporter, the murder device that can fix everything, but only one time.
Right. Yeah, that's the that's the limitation. You have to suspend disbelief on, but it was I think the Vok Tyler character in arc, I think that's one of the most interesting aspects of the first season. Just this, they had this character, they kept it hidden from the audience. They had this
with
big
partial
surprise.
Success.
Right. Like there was suspicions, and people were starting to figure it out. But yeah, they did things like had the character have two different, like the actor had a fake name on the call sheet for when they were filming it, so that it was always two different people
and a fake IMDb listing. But then fans very quickly spotted, hey, in Persian, this actor's name means live long and prosper.
Right. So yeah, it's hard to slip things by fans these days. That's for sure. But I still like the Vok Tyler, the aspect, the subplot of the season. That was good. So the reveal of Lorca at the end, another kind of interesting twist. It's one of the, like I said in the recap, it's like a Sixth Sense moment where you sort of reevaluate everything that Lorca has done since you've first encountered him and go, that idea that, now that I know who he really is, that changes how I see all those other scenes. That was for me anyway.
Yeah, and they did that actually showing Burnham realizing this, the whole issue with his eyes, the issue of picking her, all these different things throughout where these hints were there, but she didn't have the context to get the fulfillment of it.
Right.
The eyes were just an accident, from the accident that blew up his ship. And it turns out, of course, that's actually an issue for Terrans in the Prime Universe, which they really don't play with for Georgiou when she's in the Prime Universe. They just kind of mention once in a while.
Presumably, she's got contact lenses that are like sunglasses, and they could have done exactly the same thing for Lorca, but then we wouldn't have the reveal.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So,
what I find interesting is in the sequence where he's being tortured by the guy who apparently Lorca took advantage of this guy's sister, and then something bad happened to her. We're not sure what. And so he's really mad at Lorca. He wants him to say her name, and Lorca doesn't. And as we're first watching this pre-reveal, we're thinking he can't say her name because he doesn't know it. He's not from this universe.
Yeah.
But and the guy even brings in one of Lorca's former allies and is like, I'm going to kill him if you don't say my sister's name. And the new prisoner who's been brought in is like, please just say it. And Lorca doesn't, and we think it's because he can't, and this guy dies.
Horribly.
Horribly.
Yeah.
And so this is Lorca letting this guy die when he doesn't have to. And it's unclear to me exactly why he lets this guy die. I suppose it's because he's provoking his captor to let him out of the agonizer so he can attack him. And so he's withholding the name of the sister until that point. That's my best guess. It's not really made clear on the screen.
That's kind of what I figured too. It was just he's trying to get this guy to get so mad that he's fine. I'm going to let you out. I'm going to beat you up myself. And oops, too late.
Yeah. Well, he makes him think he's killed him with the agonizer, and when he takes him out to revive him, because the Emperor might be a little upset that he's killed him instead of letting her do it, that's when he takes advantage of the guy.
Yeah. Another interesting thing that happens in this is in the sequence that isn't explained, but will be recognizable to longtime fans, is in the sequence where L'Rell is doing an operation on Ash Tyler's brain and letting the Vok personality go. And there's a moment in this where he's like ranting in Klingon. And then as she's using these lasers to manipulate his brain through his skull, he switches to the same rant in English. It's like a continuation of the same rant, but it's now in English. And that's the sign that the Vok personality has been definitively severed. And then L'Rell does the Klingon death cry. And which goes all the way back to Next Gen, where when a Klingon warrior dies, the other Klingons who are present will do this death cry howl thing to alert the people in the afterlife that a Klingon warrior is arriving. And so she does that for Vok, but they now that his spirit is departing, but they don't explain that at all. And I thought that was a nice touch. Yeah.
I like that they didn't feel the need to over-explain everything in this episode. They kind of respected the audience a bit to pick things up, and I like when they do that. It's really good.
Another nice thing that they didn't over-explain is why the Defiant route back to the main universe is not going to work. Because according to Emperor Georgiou, when the Defiant crew came over, they all went insane. And that actually fits with what was happening in the Tholian Web, where we saw the Defiant ship phasing between the two universes. Their crew had gone crazy. And so it's like, if you try to go back that way, you're all going to go crazy too, for all we know.
Right. And that may figure into what was going on with Georgiou at the end of season 3 a little bit as well. I'm trying to remember if that was entering in. Yeah.
Because she was going crazy and ultimately would have had even worse problems.
Yep. Right. Yeah.
By the way, so we mentioned that Stamets sees Culber in mycelial space, and he asks him, so are you just like trapped here like me? And he's like, no, I'm dead. And that was, I'm not just caught in the network, I'm actually dead. And next season, they're going to completely reverse that. And it's like, what an idiot I was. I wasn't dead. I was just caught in the network. I maybe could have come back a year earlier without all that torture and isolation. But it's far more interesting this way.
Yeah.
It's far more interesting to have like, okay, we've got this network that is somehow running all life in all different universes, and a dead person can manifest in that. And even though it's not a classical understanding from any particular religion of how the afterlife works. There's something here, and that's far more interesting than how they walk it back. And in hindsight, knowing what they're going to do, this is just stupid.
Yeah.
It's like, no, yeah, the very first thing that Stamets said, you're just caught in the network, was right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it still doesn't make sense to me, because he got his neck snapped. like how does he end up in the? I think they explain it at some point, but I think my memory is I didn't buy it. It was a lame explanation.
There was something that I can't remember the explanation either, but there was something he said, like the mycelial network recreated his body or something like that. Something kind of lame like that, because it really was kind of a cheap rebirth, if you will.
Yeah.
It
was so much more interesting this way.
It was worthy of Stephen Moffat. Nobody ever dies.
Well, and for Stamets, it gave him that interesting choice to stay there with Culber,
right,
or wake up. Literally, just open your eyes and wake up, which he did. And then goes out and he's ready to go. But it made that interesting choice.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So any other notes on this episode, Father Cory?
Well, they did change time in the third season, because when Emperor goes back through the
Guardian.
The Guardian, thank you.
Yep.
She kills Stamets.
His friends call him Carl.
Carl,
yeah.
Yes.
She kills Stamets before we see Stamets in this episode wake up from Mirror Universe Stamets. Wake up on the med bed or wherever he was.
That's true. Yeah, before he even ended up in the mycelial network. So yeah,
Yep.
we now have a paradox.
Well, also Emperor Georgiou meets a completely different fate in that timeline, which they hand wave over by having the Guardian say, "Oh, there's so many different versions of us." So that was just a mirror universe.
Yeah, another mirror universe, part of the multiverse. Anything else, Father Cory?
Nope.
Okay, Jimmy, anything else? All right, let's wrap things up there then. We want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek, including Jonathan S., Sam E., Eric E., Brian S., and Michael P. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. So that's it from us. What did you think of this Discovery episode, Vaulting Ambition? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, or our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the original series episode, Court Martial. Until then, Father Cory Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Tom.
Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thanks, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, no one prepares Kelpian like the Imperial Chef. Blah.